Hey y'all, this is Carrie Rodriguez, and you are watching Time to Connect.
Hey, Carrie Rodriguez, thank you so much for taking the time to connect.
I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, John.
I really appreciate it. How are you doing this morning?
Very caffeinated, so I might be a little chatty. I just had a meeting that was at 8:30 a.m., so yeah, I'm up.
Good. Are you coming to us from Austin?
I am, yes.
Yeah. How are you enjoying this fall weather, this fall 100-degree weather here in Texas?
Yeah, it's hell on earth. But I mean, I feel a little guilty. I got to escape the heat for a full 5 weeks this summer, and I was in the upper Midwest with my family, so I shouldn't really be complaining because there are people who've had to stay here for the whole experience. So, yeah, doing
Yeah,
okay,
it's
hanging
been
in.
pretty. We've had a weird couple of years. You are really busy, by the way. I'm curious how you fared in the pandemic, but let me just say before you answer that question, singer-songwriter, recording artist, composer of the musical Americano, founder of the concert series Laboratorio, host of the video series From Texas with Love, mom. I'm sure I'm leaving out a few things. So what drives you to stay so productive, Carrie?
Well, necessity for one. I think I think these days to be a musician means you've got to be able to do a million different things with your music, which actually is a great challenge because yes, financially you really need to be able to diversify, but then that keeps things interesting. For many years I was solely a singer-songwriter touring artist, and I started doing that in my very early 20s, probably 21, when I met Chip Taylor and immediately hit the road and started making records. And I learned so much from traveling around the world and doing that. But I've really enjoyed the challenges actually of the last few years in terms of having to get outside of that box that I knew so well and find other ways to reach people with music.
Yeah. During the pandemic, was it I mean, it was difficult for all of us, obviously, and I'm not sure we're completely through it, but it's, the floodgates are certainly open, and it's great to be back playing. I know. Was it more difficult, do you think, or less difficult having a child, having a baby at home?
I think it was less difficult for someone of my level of privilege, I will say, because I want to be careful with that. If I were a working mom, let's say a single mom, or if both my husband and I had jobs that required us to be, in person working from 9 to 5, or even on Zoom from 9 to 5, I think that would be extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
We are so lucky in that we both have jobs that we make our own hours and create our own universes in that way. So because of that, I think it actually was easier to be a parent and have the energy and optimism of, at the time when the pandemic first hit, of a 4-year-old in our house every day. It just kept things light, and we, had a million reasons to smile every day. Forced me out of the house every day because a 4-year-old needs lots of exercise. So we were out taking nature walks every day. I have never, in that period of time, I got to know more about Texas plants than I've known from like an entire lifetime of living here. So yeah, I think we were really fortunate in that we had jobs that could afford us to be with our kid and enjoy him and let him sort of help lighten our sort of overall feeling about the world.
Yeah, right on. And is he, you said 4, is he 4 now, or he's probably 6
No,
by now, isn't he?
yeah, he's about to turn 7. So he was 4
Gotcha.
when the shutdown happened, and he was in pre-K, and we pulled him out of pre-K, and so we had a full year and a half with him at home,
Hmm.
uh, and that was, of course, challenging, but we did end up, working him into a lot of the work that we did,
Yeah,
music work. I mean,
really. Okay.
yeah, like one of the first things we did in March of 2020 was we started a video series from home called A Song for You.
Yes.
So there was so much, at the time, everyone was doing Zoom concerts, right? The
Right.
streaming concerts. And as we all know, those are so challenging. You're
Mhm.
applying to a computer screen, all the glitches, it's painful.
Yeah. Can be.
Um, so my husband, in addition to being a musician, is also a videographer, and we took
Oh, nice.
full advantage of that and would have him set up a camera and get good audio mics and things set up, and we would record one song every few days, and would take requests from people.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it meant we had to go learn the song or work up, our own version. And our 4-year-old at the time, we called him the producer. So he would be behind the camera. He would, turn it on, make sure we were in the screen, everything was in focus. And then he'd lay down underneath the tripod and kind of take a nap while we played our song a few times.
That's amazing. Well, with a mom and a dad who are both singer-songwriters, I'm just wondering, has he started playing music yet?
He is just now starting violin lessons with his grand teacher, which means, so Bill Dick was my violin teacher in Austin growing up, and he's a part of our family, and is still like a teacher to me as well. So Bill, who's 82 years old, is going to be giving our son violin lessons this year.
That's amazing. That's just
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
Well, you too you were sort of born to be an artist, weren't you? I mean, your father was David Rodriguez, singer-songwriter. Your mom was the painter, Katie Nail. You're the granddaughter of Francis Nail. Is that how it worked out for you? Is like you were always going to be an artist of some sort, or did you have those moments of wondering if you're going to do something else?
I really didn't. I think I just didn't know any better.
Mhm.
I mean, my first memories, like as a toddler, are of my mom. She didn't have a separate art studio, so I just remember always there being a large painting on an easel in the living room. The whole house smelled like turpentine, which I'm sure is very
Mhm.
toxic. And she would blast opera while she was painting, took me to her friends' art shows. And my grandmother, yes, is a writer. She also was an abstract painter as well. So I honestly didn't know that was even unusual. I just
Right.
thought everybody's parents have, pictures of naked, like patterned leg paintings in their living room. That's normal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I was, so many artists are met with that, kind of typical parent thing. Well, what are you going to do for your plan B, or what's your backup? And I just never had that.
Mm.
So I was very fortunate in that sense. I was very encouraged and supported, and never thought it was a crazy career idea until I grew up and realized it really was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love the story, and I know you've told it a lot, but if you don't mind telling it again, the story of how you chose violin when you were 5, I think, something like that, in school.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to public elementary school in Austin, and so fortunate that the year I started elementary school, my violin teacher, Bill Dick, who I just mentioned, was starting a pilot program in schools to teach kindergarten students Suzuki violin lessons.
Yeah.
And I remember, okay, I was really bad at nap time. I'd already had a parent-teacher conference early on in the year because I just chit-chatted the whole time. And I just remember getting up to go to the bathroom during nap time and walking down the hall where he was giving violin lessons, and I could hear these like squawky, teeny violins playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And this is, I don't understand, but for whatever reason, that really appealed to me.
Mhm.
I was drawn to it, and I came home and just begged my mother for a violin. Would you go rip me a violin so I can do these lessons? And maybe I was trying to get out of nap time too a little bit. I don't know. But I do know that as soon as I started, which was already partway through the year, I caught up very quickly. And it was just obvious that that was natural and a good fit. It was something that, I didn't struggle to learn. I just enjoyed learning. And I think after that first year, I started taking private lessons with the same teacher, with Bill, who then became my teacher for a lifetime.
That's really beautiful.
Mhm.
And then you thought you were going to do classical violin, right? Went to Oberlin for a while and ended up kind of missing the whole singer-songwriter thing. And am I right that Lyle Lovett had some little part to do with you making that switch?
He did. He did. So I was on the path to become a symphony musician or teacher, and I was at Oberlin, which is a very serious classical music school, and got in on a full scholarship. So it was like, okay, I'm super lucky to be here. I better be working hard, and I was supposed to be practicing. Like I had a 7 or 8 hour a day practice regimen and Tchaikovsky and their scales, and that fall, I just remember being very homesick, especially for the music. And my roommate loved roots music and country music. And we would sit in, it was so cold outside, we'd sit in our dorm room and listen to like Leon Russell albums and Hank Williams and Willie and Robert Earl Keen. And pretty soon I started trying to play along with those records. And Lyle was one of the records. Road to Ensenada had just come out, and I was like trying to learn Stuart Duncan's fiddle parts instead of practicing my scales in Tchaikovsky. So halfway through the year, Lyle reached out to my mother. He's a family friend. My father used to, I guess he used to go see my father play in Houston in the 70s. Like
Okay.
my father was part of the Houston folk scene with
Yep.
Towns and Eric Taylor, and Lyle was younger than them and was, young man going out to see them play. So he'd always kept in touch with us. And he knew I was going to college at Oberlin, and he reached out, which is such a beautiful thing to do, and said, hey, I'm coming to play in Cleveland. Would Carrie like to come to the concert? I'll put her on the guest list. And hey, I'd love to hear her play. Tell her to bring her axe to sound check. So
Wow.
my roommate happily drives me to Cleveland. We go to the sound check. I have been shedding on that album for 2 weeks. I kind of think I know what I'm doing, but I don't. And we get to sound check, and I think the tune he asked me to sit in on was That's Right, You're Not From Texas, which
Perfect.
is like fast swing.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Well, if that was an audition, like I bombed. I was so nervous and so bad and flustered, and my solo was terrible. The band was super gracious. Lyle was gracious, but they did not invite me to then sit in at the concert, which, of course. But then I watched the concert, and I was just mesmerized by his fiddle player that night. Her name is Andrea Zahn, Nashville fiddle player. And by the end of the night, I just said, I want to do what she's doing. I want to figure it out.
Yeah.
I want to learn what I have to learn because I want to play in that band, or a band like it. This is like music that speaks to me more than anything else. And so it was from then on, I just knew I needed to shift gears. I found the Berklee College of Music, great jazz / fiddle / everything violin teacher there, and Matt Glazer, and I reached out to him, and by the next year I was at Berklee.
Wow. And how did the thing with Chip Taylor start? How did you meet him and get that gig? That was your first big gig, right?
Yeah, my first gig, really, aside from playing with my father, David. Yeah, I was right out of school, like just graduated, and back in Austin, and I think he saw me play at South by Southwest, and we had a mutual friend, and I saw him play as well. And he said, oh, well, I'd love to have fiddle in the band. I'm playing at Green Hall, in a couple weeks, coming back. And can you sing? And I mean, never sung before. That was not part of my plan. In fact, I took a class at Berklee that was called Singing for Non-Vocalists because I thought it would be an easy A. And I made a C on the first midterm. I was so bad.
Wow.
Well, I just picked a Jobim song that was way too hard, and I forgot all the lyrics and got nervous and whatever. So anyway, I didn't do so great in the singing class at Berklee. And but of course I was excited about the gig with Chip, and I think I said, sure, yeah, I sing. Yeah, sure, I can do that too. So that began that career detour. I mean, once I showed up at Green Hall, I'm sure he knew right away that I had never sung before. I didn't even know how to interact with a microphone. But I learned the fiddle stuff pretty well. And soon he wanted me to sing. I went out on tour with him right after that in Europe, actually. And I think he had me sing one duet with him. It was a song that Billy Vera and Judy Clay had done as a duet in the 60s. Why Can't We Be Like Storybook Children? Oh, yes, that's right. It's all coming back to me. First interracial hit, Chip said, in the 60s. And this real sweet, sentimental ballad. And he would lower the microphone down and have me come over and sing it with him. And I was this like nervous, young, shy girl. And
about what year about are we talking? Or
this
years?
is 2001.
Okay.
Or 2001, I guess, because I just
approximately 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after that, experience, 6 weeks later, Chip has written 20 duets. He's like, yeah, he's so New York. We're gonna go make a record, as soon as we get home from this tour. And this is, who do you want in the band? Okay, well, let's make this happen. And suddenly I'm thrown into being a singer type performer in the Americana world. Just not anything I was looking for.
How long did it take you before you really embraced it and said, okay, I guess I'm a singer too?
Many years.
Really?
Actually. Yeah. And we did a lot of gigs, and that's the best way to learn is being on a stage. You figure out what works. And Chip was, I think, one of the greatest lessons he taught me was, when you're singing a song, you don't think about if you're singing in tune or how you're delivered. No, you just have to be living in the song. And in that moment in the song, you're in that story. It's you, and I really did take that to heart. But I think for years, when people asked me what I did, I would say I'm a fiddle player, I'm a violin player. I would never say I'm a singer.
Wow. Is it that much different than playing the violin in the sense that, or the fiddle, in the sense that if you're thinking too much, you're probably not playing to your potential, that you just kind of sort of lose yourself and really do it with feeling rather than concentrate on the technical aspects?
It is really, it is very similar to playing the violin.
Yeah.
Yes. And the violin is such a human voice sounding instrument anyway. I guess the difference for me, though, is that I put so many years into learning the technical things so that I could express myself the way I wanted to.
Right.
Having all those tools so that I could really say what I wanted to say with that instrument. And with singing, I wasn't afforded that luxury of all the training, but I maybe that was a good thing, because I've met a lot of professional singers who are amazing singers, but they struggle, I think, with being too much in their heads when they're singing, because they know so much about their instrument. I know nothing.
Right.
Zero about singing. I just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do it well. And you have performed and worked with a cast of legends, in addition to Chip, Lucinda Williams, John Prine, Patty Griffin, Bill Frisell, Rickie Lee Jones, Mary Gauthier, Los Lobos, Alejandro Escovedo, many more. One of the questions I like to ask my guests, especially people like you who have performed with so many amazing people, is who is someone working today that you've not performed or collaborated with that you would like to?
Raul Malo, who I have, he recorded a song with me for my last record. I sang on a song, a classic Mexican song, Perfidia, but I would love to collaborate with him in a live setting. He's on my bucket list, or the whole band. I mean, I'm a huge Mavericks fan. But yeah, I think he's one of the greatest singers of all time, and I would love to do.
I think we should make this happen. Maybe this is the beginning of making that happen. Tell me about the Frisell connection. Bill is one of my big heroes, and I've had him. I was so blessed to have him on this series, and seen him a bunch of times, and I'm just a real fan. How did that connection happen, and what was that like playing with Bill?
I, yeah, I am too. And I was, I still remember the first time I discovered his music. I was on tour with Chip, and my ex-husband, so my husband at the time was a jazz musician, jazz saxophone player. And I remember I was in a record store in Sweden and looking at CDs and wanting to bring him home something. And I was like, oh, I've heard he likes this guy, Bill Frisell. I'm gonna, yeah, I'll get him this, you know. And it was the album The Willies, which is with Danny Barnes, and it's a lot of these kind of old time bluegrass tunes, but completely reimagined. So, and at the time, I was very much into fiddle music, so that was a perfect entry, I think, for me. But I just remember putting that on in the touring van and falling deeply in love with the music. Couldn't believe how much it transported me. And I mean, Bill's music, when you're driving through beautiful scenery, like how about some fjords in Norway, and then and then you're listening to that, it's magical. So that was the first time I just absolutely fell in love with his music, and then went to see him play at the Village Vanguard in New York City, because I was living in New York at the time.
Yeah.
Then I took Chip to see him play at the Village Vanguard in New York City, and I think it, you know, I said, Chip, what would you think if we reached out and to see if Bill would be interested in playing on our next record? And Chip loved the idea, and pretty soon we're asking Lee Townsend, you know, we didn't think we had a chance, but we were hopeful, and Bill was so sweet and agreed to come join us, and we had this just magical, mystical recording session. That was for an album called Red Dog Tracks, the last duet record I made with Chip, and we've had many other, you know, beautiful times in studios. I've gotten to be on the road with him in a few different bands. I've seen his show so many times every time he comes to Austin, which is a joy. Yeah, he's such a special person.
Yeah, he really is. He's amazing. And I have to ask you about John Prine too, because John Prine's another one of my big heroes. How often or how many times did you get to play with John? What was that about?
Yeah. Well, the first time I played with John, it was with Chip Taylor. We opened up for him. I think it was the very first tour I did with Chip, actually. We played the Waterfront in Belfast and the Olympia Theatre in Dublin. Those were some of my first gigs, opening up for John Prine. And yeah, just such a kind, sweet, funny man. He was very quiet, and then just remember a few times being like at a dinner or something, and he wouldn't have said anything for the whole time, and then all of a sudden he'd just like say this complete zinger. He'd just been like thinking, formulating maybe, and then have everybody like rolling around laughing on the floor. But yeah, he had me open up for him many times over the years. I did one tour in the northeast of Canada that I was playing solo, which I don't usually do. But for whatever, maybe because the logistics of the touring were really tricky, I don't remember, but I was doing this solo, and I went to rent a car at LaGuardia before the tour, and I had it like standard, you know, whatever, reserved, but the only car they had in the lot was a red Mustang with a white racing stripe. So that was my rental car, and I drove to Canada in this thing, following John Prine's outfit, and I would pull up to the venue every day in my Mustang. It was hilarious. And I just remember this guy that worked for him for so many years, Eric, a sweetheart, would be like, "Oh, here comes Sally," and I just had the time of my life being around them, and I got to sing every night. We would sing the In Spite of Ourselves, that duet, but we also would do, oh my gosh, super sad, beautiful song. Unwed Fathers. You know that song? Just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John could do that for sure. Yeah, that's oh wow, that's so cool. Well, how about your records? I know that you have something like 8 solo records. Of course, you had a lot with Chip, and you played on different things. Is the Lola record the last record you've put out?
It is the last record. I did a, I guess they call it a concept album, but I did a record for the musical
Oh yeah.
where we were working through those songs, and it is on Spotify, although
Hmm.
some of the songs have changed since then.
Okay.
But it's mostly me singing the songs that I wrote for the
Uh-huh.
musical.
Okay.
But no, I haven't made a record, just a few singles here and there.
Do you
I
have
think
plans to do another record?
I think about it. I would love to, but I've just been so tied up with
Yeah.
music in other ways.
Yes.
And for so many years, I was on that kind of schedule of make a record every
Yeah.
2 to 3 years max,
Yeah.
but touring, and I'm off of that now, and it's freeing in a
Hmm.
way. I like that I've been diving into other kinds of musical projects, but there are benefits to having a new record, and just
Hmm.
if I have a large enough group of songs that I feel passionately about, I'll definitely want to record them, but I don't right now.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, you've certainly not been resting on your laurels. You've been very busy with these projects, and I want to ask you about a couple of them, but I also want to respect your time and not take too much more of your time. Uh, let's see, what will I ask you about? Well, I have to mention Brene Brown. I know she's a big fan, and you and Gina Chavez wrote her podcast music, didn't you?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, and Brene, I love this quote. She says, "She's the trifecta for me: beautiful singer, soulful songwriter, and kick-ass fiddler." Is that is your connection to Brene just the fact that you wrote the music for her podcast, or was there some other connection there?
I had met her once before. I performed at the Texas Conference for Women, and I don't know how long ago it was, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And she was the keynote speaker.
Hmm.
And I believe I feel like I either performed right before, I feel like I performed after she spoke.
Hmm.
I just remember being very verklempt from hearing her speak and being very emotional and teary and
Yeah,
then having to perform. So it
yeah.
must have been after. But anyway, we met at that event and connected, and she invited me to be, at the time she was doing an interview series on her website. It was just printed, it was like a blog. But she
Mhm.
would ask artists questions about vulnerability. And actually, so she sent me the questions to answer, and they were hard, of course, because they're about being vulnerable. And I was on the road, but I just remember my neighbor, Ann Abear, who was a big Brene Brown fan, and she knew that Brene had asked me to do this questionnaire, and she knew I hadn't done it yet. And I was out on the road, and I called Ann and said, I forgot my coat. I'm like in Boston or something. It's freezing. Can you please like FedEx me this coat and I'll send you the money, whatever. And Ann said, I will as soon as you've answered Brene Brown's questions. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. She goes, no, you can email them to me so that I know you
Blackmail.
did. And she did. She held me to it, and I finished the questions. I sent them off.
Wow.
So that was a good friend right there, nudging
Yeah.
me do what I needed to do. But yeah, and then after that, I guess Brene, I think she's such a fan of Texas music, and kept up, I guess, with me over the years, and was a big fan of Gina's, and she had the idea to put us together, which I thought was so cool. She reached out to both of us and said, would y'all want to do something together, which I love. So
And have you collaborated with her on other projects, or is that the only collaboration you and Gina have done?
I have. We wrote a song together on my last record, Lola.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
it's
song.
called La Última Vez.
Yeah.
And we've done a couple of other things too. We collaborated together about a year ago, um, for a project about kind of tied into the book Forget the Alamo. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that song. We'll see.
Okay. Well, what's that like co-writing for you? The songwriting process, we could probably talk for an hour about it. And um, how does collaborating on a song like that differ for you than maybe just writing it on your own?
I love collaborating. I love having another human to bounce things off of.
Mm.
Songwriting alone is lonely, and
And it's so
it's
hard
such
to stay objective.
it's so hard to stay positive too. I mean, you just start the self-doubt can be really intense. And is this
Mhm.
any good? Oh, this is so cheesy. It's always the songs that I think are I'm like, oh, I can't believe I came up with this chorus. This is so corny. But those are usually the ones that end up being the better songs.
Yeah.
It's funny. But yeah, I do I feel like I do my best when I'm collaborating,
Mhm.
actually. It's just the nature of how I've always done music. And I really love learning. I mean, everybody has, with music, it's like we all make it in our own way. You can't help but do things your way. So it's so much fun to get inside somebody else's head and see
Mhm.
how they do it and how do they
Mhm.
craft. And I just love that.
Yeah. So how did the musical come about for you? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I was approached in 2016 or 17 by the producer, just kind of a cold call to my manager, Phyllis, actually saying, has Carrie ever written for a musical? Would she be interested in writing music for an original musical? It's a true story about a dreamer from Arizona, an undocumented young man who was brought by his parents when he was 2 years old from Mexico to Phoenix and grew up in Arizona. His parents didn't tell him that he was undocumented.
Wow.
So he grew up believing he was an American citizen, and
Mm.
his dream was to become a Marine. And he was just such a patriotic kid, loved America, wanted to serve his country, goes to the recruiter when he's 18 and realizes there's something wrong.
Mm.
Why doesn't he have a social security number? And goes home and confronts his parents and is devastated to learn this new truth.
Mm.
And then Tony, his name is Tony Valdovinos, ends up becoming very involved in Arizona politics and starts canvassing, going door to door, getting people to register to vote, a thing that he can only dream of doing someday. But he's made such a huge difference. This young man who still cannot vote is like helping to change the face of politics in Arizona,
Wow.
getting people elected who are helping dreamers, helping immigrants. And Arizona is one of the toughest places to be. I mean, until yeah, they had so when Tony was about to go to college, for example, they passed a law saying that if you're undocumented, even if you grew up in Arizona, you're all of a sudden out of state to go to college and you have to pay 4 times the tuition. So it's impossible to go to college. So he, hearing his story, and then I flew out to Arizona and met him soon after that. I couldn't say no to this project, even though I knew it was going to be more work and time than I could ever imagine, and uh, a crazy adventure. I just knew that that was an opportunity to make a real difference with music. So how could I
Beautiful.
do anything but just embrace that?
Well, listen, I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time. So how about you mind doing a series of kind of rapid fire questions to
Oh,
take this thing home?
okay, I'll try. Yeah.
Okay. All
See,
right.
Brene did that to me, and yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Okay.
I always ask my guests about, or almost always, about someone that we all, anybody who even vaguely calls himself a singer-songwriter owes a debt of gratitude to Bob Dylan. And I'm very, very fascinated by the man. I'm just curious, how do you think about Dylan? Just in a kind of a short answer to that one. Just
Sure.
what about Bob?
I he, I love his mystery. I love that he can be a million different people and still somehow embody Bob Dylan. But I just love all the different eras. I don't I don't like the music from every era,
Right.
but I appreciate that there are eras that he's constantly evolving still today, and that he just doesn't care, and he'll sure this song's going to be 10 minutes because I have this story to tell,
Yeah.
but this other song might not be at all. I love that that freedom that somehow he's had throughout his entire career, and he's written some of the greatest songs
Oh yeah.
in the American songbook. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, unfair question, but kind of a cliche question, but sort of a fun one. If you could only I guess it's the deserted island question. One album. You can only listen to one album for the rest of your life. What album are you going to choose?
Mm. It's going to be a Bill Frisell album. Wow. Which one do I choose? I love Valentine.
Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful record.
It is a beautiful record. We still listen to that all the time. For some reason,
Yeah.
we keep going back. But I also like some of the bigger, large band kind of ones. Like Blues Dream was always a favorite of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but let's go for, or maybe like a solo Bill Frisell album. Get right down to like.
Oh, yeah. 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 Are you talking about this one here? The Music Is?
The Music Is the newer one, but what's that one from, like, it's 20, 30 years old.
That big double album.
Good Dog, Good Dog.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that one right here.
What's it called? Good Dog?
It's called Good Dog.
Bad Dog. No.
Happy Man.
Happy
Good Dog,
Man.
Happy Man.
Yeah, I love that record so much.
Yeah, that's a great record. Yeah.
That seems like a good desert island album.
Yeah. Okay, your favorite venue to play.
Oh, favorite venue to play. There's something really special about the Paramount Theater. It's in Austin, Texas. It's quirky, and it's still got the backstage and the dressing rooms are still quirky and weird and like old. There's a history there, and standing on the stage, you just feel all of that history.
Yeah.
I think
I've seen a lot of great shows there, but I will, the one that just will always just sear me is I saw Guy Clark's last show there, and wow. That was. Whew, okay, Carrie, what pisses you off?
Asshole driving.
Yeah, yeah. In the history of humanity, has anyone ever made someone speed up by rushing up on their bumper?
Oh my God, I know.
Man, I'll tell you. So, do you have any methods of dealing with the slings and arrows of life? Meditation, prayer, music? Is it just music? Do you have any kind of practice that when things are tough that helps you deal with things?
Yoga is great.
Yeah.
For that, and specifically the breathing part. It's so good. And also for me, practicing a violin, just doing I do scales and these funny technical exercises that I've been doing since I was 10. It puts me in a meditative state. I just stand. Sometimes I'll watch my hand in the mirror to make sure it like looks right, but then I just stop thinking about anything, and I just doing this thing. And when I'm done, I feel better.
I'm sure that is very much like meditation in the sense that the ego just goes away and you just become part of the flow. Any guilty pleasures? Something people might be surprised to hear about you that you would care to admit?
Yeah, boy, I have to admit it. I mean, I have been known to watch bad TV sometimes. It's not like I do it all the time. Okay, yeah, I have. And there's one, okay, this is embarrassing. I shouldn't admit this. I shouldn't admit it. And I don't know how I came across the show. It's so soap opera. This Is Us. It's so soap opera. I know.
My wife watches that. Yeah.
Oh my God. And my husband won't get near me if he knows I'm watching. I have to like hide, and I don't do it often. But I go and I like actually have to go in the bedroom with the laptop because I can't put it on the TV in the living room. No.
That's
funny. And I watch good TV too. I mean, I love Schitt's Creek. That was fantastic. But yeah, okay. Occasionally I'll watch something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, you have so much to be proud of. If I just ask you that, I know it's probably not a fair question. What are you most proud of?
Well, I think most proud of, hard not to say my kiddo.
Right. Yeah,
it's really hard not to just go there.
Of course.
But like, I'm most proud, and okay, if I'm talking about my kiddo, I just am so proud that so far He's a kind, sweet dude.
Mhm.
It makes me so happy. Like when I watch him, like sharing acts of kindness with other people, or
Yeah.
recently I witnessed him like trying to make a toddler who was having kind of a meltdown make her feel better. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
this moment, like my level of happiness and joy is so
Yeah.
maximized. I'm done.
Yeah. That's
So
great.
yeah, and I'm not saying proud like I did that. I'm just
Right.
maybe the better term is I'm just
But but
grateful.
but you obviously had a lot to do with it. I anytime a friend of mine says, hey, I'm thinking about having a kid, but I'm worried I'll do something wrong. I'll screw them up. And I, I'm not maybe the world's authority, but I've had a couple of kids, and I have a couple of kids. And one of the things that I think we've learned as parents is that yes, what you do matters, certainly. Discipline matters. Everything you do really does have some small effect, but the most important thing is who you are, and what you show that child, because you are their role model growing up. And I'm sure that he's kind because you're kind. So good on you. Last two questions. What do you think happens when we die?
Yeah. I don't have a real well, of course, who has a concrete answer for
Nobody.
that?
That's part of the that's part of the reason it fascinates me, because there's nothing more common. We all do it. We
Yeah.
all experience loss. I've lost my parents. I know you've lost people. And even though it's ordinary, and we are the only creatures in existence that know what's going to happen, and we have that
Mhm.
foreknowledge, which creates the mystery for us a little bit. But even then, when it happens, it seems so weird.
Yeah.
Just seems so
It-
difficult to grasp. And so it's part of it is I'm getting older, and I can't help but think about it a little bit. But I'm just interested. I was a
Yeah.
philosophy major in undergraduate, and I was always just interested in wrestling with these big questions. So it's become one of my questions I ask all my guests. What do you think happens when we die?
I guess I do feel like somehow some essence of us joins the land of the living. Somehow I feel like there is, I don't know if it's molecular, I don't know,
Mhm.
but I feel that way because, well, I guess for the most simplistic reason is that because I feel people who I have
Yeah.
lost around in a very like, I mean, in a very broad esoteric kind of sense, right? But I do, like, I feel their
Yeah.
essence at different times in my life, and so it's not even that I'm not sure that's like a comforting thought that I have. Like, I don't know that it makes me feel less afraid of death, but it is sort of what I naturally think, is that somehow we rejoin
Mhm.
um, planet Earth somehow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that makes sense. And last question. When you are dead and gone, what do you hope people say about you?
Mm. I hope they say that I was kind, um, that I helped them when they needed help, and that I gave them something that brought them joy, whether that was music or just like a really good enchilada supper.
Well, you have clearly brought a lot of people joy. And Carrie, thank you so much for doing this. It's a real honor meeting you and getting to spend a little time with you. So thank you so much for doing this. And I wish you all the best. I hope our paths cross at some point again. And I'll see you down the road.
All right. See you, John. Thanks so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.